Next, we'll hear from those local residents who indicated a wish to speak to the inquiry. Agreed to hear from Councillor Potter first. I can see you're there. And I have a written copy of the statement I think you're going to read to us.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
The Rainham area is no stranger to housing developments, with the town growing substantially since the Second World War, from a village to become a commuter town with around 10,000 homes built over those decades. In recent years, around
Section 38.6, all with regard to identifying and assessing the impressive wealth of material considerations arising in favour of the appeal proposal, the many conspicuous and very significant benefits presented by the appeal proposal heavily underscores this. Planning permission should therefore be granted without delay for the appeal proposal. The clear strength of the benefits demonstrated by it mean that even were it to be concluded that it conflicts with given policies, planning permission could and should properly be granted, indeed whether applying the tilted balance or not, in determining the appeal under section 38.6. Madam, in due course, you will be respectfully invited to recommend to the Secretary of State that planning permission be granted. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from those local residents who indicated a wish to speak to the inquiry. Agreed to hear from Councillor Potter first. I can see you're there. And I have a written copy of the statement I think you're going to read to us.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
The Rainham area is no stranger to housing developments, with the town growing substantially since the Second World War, from a village to become a commuter town with around 10,000 homes built over those decades. In recent years, around 500 homes have been built and will be built as part of live development in Rainham, and there is over 300 homes in the pipeline having gained permission. So why, might you ask, has there been such an overwhelming reaction to this development? What is different about this from what came before? What is so significant about the harm? Why did the community petition I started back in 2018 with my late colleague, Councillor David Carr, amass over 1,000 signatures in a matter of weeks? And of course, that was at a time when the development was just an initial concept. And why did over around 3,500 residents make personal written objections against the development? And you'll be hearing from some of those residents directly in a few moments. And by the way, that number of objections was the most received for a housing development in the history of Medway. So where to start? Well, as you know, the development is proposed in a special area of orchards and farmlands, which is to the north of the railway line, extending down to the River Medway, west from Burrengrave Lane and along to Yokosuka Way. It is a vital green lung preventing total urbanisation of Rainham through to Twydall and Gillingham. This treasured area of countryside includes historic working orchards and associated heritage properties, farmland, woodland areas and Riverside Country Park, including the Ramsar marshes along the river. The relationship between the Lower Rainham orchards and farmland and Riverside Country Park, which altogether forms the area of local landscape importance, the Gillingham Riverside area, cannot be separated. They run parallel east to west between the railway and the river. The proposed development would cut the heart out of this rural landscape and would severely impact the rural character of what is a vital escape from urban and suburban Medway, supporting the well-being of many in Rainham and East Medway. The development would also extinguish the orchards and would introduce development into an area which is predominantly agricultural land of best and first and most versatile quality. And you can see from the photo behind me, which was taken in the summer of 2019, that there was a bountiful harvest from the orchards. Furthermore, the development would significantly erode this important green buffer, which prevents urban coalescence, whilst no doubt setting a precedent that would lead to the obliteration of the entire Lower Rainham green lung. As an isolated car-dependent development, it would overwhelm the highway network, which is already stretched to capacity by the aforementioned housing developments built over decades, and the live development and permissions, of course, in the area, which is adding to that. Furthermore, it's important to bear in mind that there are only two connecting highway routes through the Rainham area, which is the already congested A2 and Lower Rainham Road, and geography dictates that there is an east-west flow of traffic. Therefore, the development would lead to the most severe highway congestion and would contribute significantly to detrimental air quality. A key aspect of the transport and access issues is that the development would have limited pedestrian connectivity to local centres and would lack acceptable safe walking and cycling routes due to the nature of the country lanes and narrow highways in Lower Rainham. During daylight hours, there are rural bridle public rights of way routes which can be safely traversed. However, we are not convinced that these homes would be occupied by 3,000 to 4,000 people who would want to go rounding along these routes just to go to the shops or to work. The public transport in the immediate area is very limited by its rural nature, and the nearest train station, Rainham, is around 40-minute walk by the safest route. It should also be noted that the nearest centres, which are Rainham and Twydall, are small and have limited employment opportunities. Therefore, they're not going to provide employment for the vast majority of people living on this development. This, combined with the issues relating to transport and access, means that the car use would be substantially higher than average. This reality is in stark contrast to what is presented in the appellant's traffic assessment. It is clear that the transport and access issues alone result in significant harm and rule this development totally unsustainable. Although Rainham has become a town consisting of a small centre surrounded by suburban sprawl, it has retained the treasured area of countryside and rural character in Lower Rainham, which, as I stated earlier, acts as a strategic green buffer preventing coalescence with nearby towns and settlements. It's abundantly clear that any benefit of providing new homes would not outweigh the significant harm this unsustainable development would have on the rural landscape and character of the area, or on the highways and the environment. And of course, there is the loss and the best and most versatile orchards and farmland. The impacts from such a development would not only be detrimental to Rainham, but to people in the wider east of Medway. The area does not need to be allocated for development in order for Medway to meet its locally assessed need as per the council's emerging local plan. Therefore, the appeal and the proposed development should be dismissed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I just ask, are you happy to take any questions Mr. Lopez might have for you?
Yes.
Do you have any questions, Mr. Lopez?
Madam, I don't. Councillor Potter, thank you for that. The issues that you raise are being dealt with elsewhere between the witnesses, so I don't have any questions for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
Okay,
Councillor
thank you.
Potter. Thank you. Next up, we've got Ms. Hewitt. Would you like to? Yeah, there we go.
Good morning, everyone. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for letting us have this opportunity to speak today on behalf of the local community. We really appreciate that. My name is Isla. I'm a local resident who has grown up in Rainham and watched it develop, for better or worse, over the last 39 years. I'd like to begin by introducing ourselves as a collective and to provide some context about who we are. Collectively, we form part of the Pump Lane Steering Group. We are part of a group that formed organically in November 2018, just a short time after we learned of the planned development of Pump Lane. As local residents, a small number of us started to voice our concerns about the development and the impact it would have on the community and local landscape. This quickly grew to a Facebook group which has over 3,200 members, and thus the Pump Lane Steering Group was formed. We're here today to try and provide a voice for that community, a community who submitted over 3,300 objections to the outline planning application, a community who have held 6 public protests, created a petition containing over 2,800 signatures, and a community who have displayed over 3,000 posters in their homes for the past 18 months to show how strongly they feel about this development. We hope that today we can provide you with a resident's perspective. These are the views of the people who live in this area and who stand to be directly impacted by this development for decades to come. Now, we're not experts, we're not planning consultants who are of course paid to achieve the most favourable outcome for their client. And we are not the appellant who stand to make millions of pounds from this development, despite not living here and therefore not truly being able to feel the negative impact it would have on the area. We are also not the experts that the appellant has employed to present complex and optimistic statistical models which do not reflect reality. We are also not NIMBYs, and I really hate to mention that word, but please understand that we're not here today objecting to any and every development as a way to block progress. We appreciate the need for housing and we understand that new houses do need to be built somewhere. But what we want to ensure is that truly affordable housing is built in the right place with sufficient infrastructure to support those new homes. We also want appropriate care and consideration for the environment and for the existing residents of the area. And this development does not address any of those points. Furthermore, the appellant's appeal does little to address the council's reasons for refusing planning applications so far. Before handing over to my fellow steering group members, I'd like to highlight 3 facts. Firstly, Medway Council has clearly stated that their imminent draft local plan satisfies the housing requirement for this area on sustainable sites, and the appellant's proposed development does not form part of that plan. Indeed, Medway Council's SLAA, agreed by Cabinet in December 2019, stated that this was not a suitable or sustainable site for development. Secondly, we feel that the data in the appellant's documentation does not reflect reality, and my fellow steering group members will expand on this shortly. Thirdly, Medway Council refused this application for 9 reasons. The appellant's appeal statement has addressed only 5 of those, with the following words used, and I quote, "Discussions are ongoing and it is anticipated that this matter will be resolved." In our mind, there is no factual basis upon which that assumption is made, other than the appellant wishing that these reasons perhaps disappear. The fact is that these issues cannot be addressed. It's impossible to double the number and width of the roads around the development site due to existing housing. It's impossible to mitigate the environmental issues and the irreversible impact this development would have on the local ecology. As a community, it is therefore clear that this appeal must be rejected. And I would now like to hand over to Paul Clark to discuss the local community's concerns over traffic.
Good morning.
Hello, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam, for allowing us to participate in the inquiry. My name is Paul Clark. I have 2 teenage daughters for whom the Lower Rainham countryside, including the Riverside Country Park and the Saxon Shoreway, are currently at the cornerstone of their social life. For them, as for many thousands of local residents, this green lung provides a unique estuary and increasingly rare clean air landscape in Medway. In this regard, I'd like to talk to you about what this development means for traffic and congestion on all photographs and video.
Mr. Clark, sorry to interrupt, you just froze there for a moment. Do you want to just go back a little bit?
Oh, sorry, I'm putting you through more. I'll start from in this regard.
Yeah.
In this regard, I'd like to talk about what this development will mean for traffic congestion on already inadequate roads, as evidenced by dozens of community posts, photographs and videos showing 2 miles of stationary traffic stretching from Pump Lane to the end of the Lower Rainham Road. The appellant is no doubt acutely aware of the overcapacities on these roads during peak times and the dangers to cyclists and pedestrians as a consequence. Indeed, their own study supporting their original application states there are over 8,000 vehicles using them in a 12-hour period. This compares to figures in the public domain from the Department for Transport, stating that it's 1,000 for average roads, rising to 1,400 here in the southeast. It's only 1,800 for minor roads, confirming there's already 4 to 5 times the number of vehicles using the Lower Rainham Road than the national average. Looking at their figures more closely, we see how polarised this traffic is at peak times. In 1 hour, it approaches the national average for 24 elsewhere in the southeast. Their recently published so-called overall access strategy issued by the appellant merely details how vehicles will access and exit their development. It does not, because it cannot, address the physical impediments restricting traffic flows on the Lower Rainham Road, notably the single lane sections at the bottom of Pump Lane due to the cottages and existing houses, and then the bridge restrictions thereafter. The council has, over recent years, already approved 866 new homes and potentially therefore 1,300 vehicles between Otter and Key Lane and the proposed development. These feed directly into these pinch points. In the 1 mile section from the bottom of Pump Lane, there are 4 locations in which the road narrows to enable to pass, 2 of which are signal controlled, including at Berengrave Nature Reserve. Even under the current circumstances, these create long queues, and we're all aware that any issues on the M2, the SRN, immediately transfer onto Lower Rainham Road and Beechings Way, both bordering the proposed developments. Once again, there are testimonies in our Facebook community to journeys taking hours to cover over a couple of miles due to these aforementioned constrictions. The measures they've outlined cannot overcome these immovable obstacles. In our opinion, they're just a smokescreen to the fact that this decade-long development will, during construction, exacerbate an already acute traffic problem at peak times along the adjacent roads, and once completed, will overwhelm them with vehicles. It brings a decade of additional construction traffic and thereafter 2,000 vehicles to the epicentre of the problem and the subsequent standstill it will create, together with the air quality, pollution and road safety implications. And yes, I said 2,000 vehicles because the community believes strongly that the traffic assessment documentation in the appellant's submission is frankly misleading. It cites that 1,250 homes, a 350 pupil school and a 140 bed care home will not significantly impact traffic in the area. Can I please ask everybody to think about that for a moment? How many households in this type of essentially rural setting have less than 2 cars? DFT statistics from 2018 state that in general, 34% of households actually have 2 or more cars. If we were to be generous and assume that an average of 1.5 cars per new household, that is nearly 2,000 more vehicles spilling out onto the inadequate Lower Rainham Road and Beechings Way. How can that not impact upon the area? The documentation assumes that people will walk to the shops and supermarket, which is 1.5 miles away. How many of us know people who walk 20 minutes to do their shopping and then walk 20 minutes back carrying their bags? The documentation also states that 29 vehicles will travel to the new school each day to drop off their pupils. That covers just 8% of the pupils. Presumably the other 92% will be walking. Yet DFT National Survey's travel statistics cite on average the percentage of parents driving their kids to school is 49%. 49%, not 8%, which is 6 times greater than the analysis in the documentation. Of course, the appellant will have lots of alternative statistics to support their view and refute these government facts. So let me ask you this. How many of us in semi-rural locations do not drive our children to school? How many of us have driven past a school anywhere in the country, be it primary or secondary, or at 8:30 or 3:30, we've not been in traffic jams, including Rainham Mark Grammar School, situated upon Pump Lane? This all needs to once again be considered in the context of the 866 houses approved in recent and current developments using the already overwhelmed Lower Rainham Road at peak times. This road runs between Lower Twydall conservation areas, community orchards, a country park, a triple SI, SPA and Ramsar site. A unique estuary ecology with community facilities for all ages, promoting mental well-being for all of its many visitors. Far from creating local amenity for pedestrians and cyclists, this proposed development concretes over the very landscape people currently cycle and walk to enjoy. And it would make the car and the issues that accompany them the overwhelming and dominant feature of Lower Rainham forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to Ms Hewitt.
Thank you. I'd now like to talk about the negative impact that this development will have upon physical and mental health and well-being, and on the healthcare services within the area. And I want to share with you the reality of what this would truly mean for local residents. Documentation submitted by the appellant during the outline planning stage stated that they assumed there would be a population increase of 3,100 persons resulting from this development. This would take the local population to just over 24,000, all of whom would need a local GP surgery, of which there are currently only 10. Now, if we assume that those 3,100 new residents spread themselves evenly across the 10 surgeries in the area, which of course we know would not be the case, each surgery in the area would have just over 2,400 patients, which is considerably larger than the 1,800 capacity set out by the NHS. Time and time again, residents in the area have told us that they struggle to get a GP appointment on the day or in the week that they desperately need one. And this is because surgeries are so heavily oversubscribed. And that's before the inclusion of this new proposed development. Plus, we've also tested this. The appellant's documentation stated that of 6 surgeries they canvassed, 5 were accepting new patients. Yet when we called the exact same surgeries, unfortunately only 1 confirmed they were accepting new patients, and another stated that the surgery may be closing shortly due to a retirement. Now, the appellant has offered to build a health centre, yet this is planned to be at the end of the build phase, which is a decade away. And of course, a building allocated as a healthcare clinic is not the same as having a health clinic with medical staff who are immediately ready and able to serve a rapidly growing community. I'd now like to turn your attention to Medway Hospital. Anyone who lives in this area knows how much we desperately need a new hospital. Medway Hospital has literally been at breaking point for years. Back in 2017, it came out of special measures after 4 long years. And since then, unfortunately, it has failed national targets each and every single year. And one irrefutable reason for this is that occupancy is over or very near capacity at all times. To evidence this, for the 2 years spanning 2018 to 2020, the hospital's annual reports noted that they did not achieve the national standard for the 4-hour performance target, finishing on just 81%. And to quote the chief executive of Medway NHS Trust, who said, "The challenges in delivery of the emergency care access standard are strongly linked to the more than 100% bed occupancy." Furthermore, in April 2020, the Care Quality Commission gave Medway Hospital a requires improvement rating, and once again, very high occupancy rates were cited as a reason for this. It's clear that the people who live in this community suffer firsthand already the ill effects of a failing healthcare service, which can no longer provide the care it should due to a growing and ageing population, which this development would only add to. Finally, I would like to highlight the importance of a community surroundings with regards to mental well-being. The proposed development site is one of the few green buffers left between the towns of Rainham and Gillingham, and its development from an apple orchard into a housing estate which significantly changed the landscape of the local area, thus impacting upon Rainham's agricultural heritage and residents' sense of place within the Medway towns as a whole. Now, the appellant has argued, and I quote, that the development will open up green spaces and provide new planting and landscaping on a site that is currently private commercial land. Yet, prior to the community fighting back against this development, Residents had walked freely through the orchards for many decades without any objection from the landowner. We feel it is worth noting that a public right-of-way application is currently being considered by Medway Council, and we urge the Inspectorate to please take this into account when making their decision. Furthermore, and most importantly, whether or not public access is permitted to the site, the orchards are very much visible and part of the rural landscape of Lower Rainham. This landscape, as it stands, is significantly important for mental well-being, as it provides a brief escapism from the urban landscape of the town, which has grown significantly over recent years. For all of these reasons, we feel that the appellant's application should be refused. Thank you for your time. I'd now like to pass over to Kate to finish our concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isla.
Welcome, Ms Belmont.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone for being here today. My name is Kate, and I'm a self-employed mother of 2 young children, and I've lived in Medway since the age of 5, and here in Twydall for the past 5.5 years. I'm a passionate member of this community, and I'm here today to represent all of those in Rainham and Twydall whom, like me, are raising children in what could arguably be the most difficult time in any of our lives. The past 2 years have been somewhat of a paradigm shift for me, as I've come to terms with what the fight lays before us, a fight for the successful continuation of ours and thousands of other species. Never before has the care of the natural world been so important. So today, I would like to talk to you about the irreversible destruction that this proposed development would have on the environment, the ecology, and the biodiversity of this area, something which biodiversity net gain cannot make up for. You will of course seen the analysis from environmental experts who reviewed the original application. Natural England noted that this application could have potential significant effects on the Medway Estuary and Marshes site of special scientific interest, special protection area and wetland of international importance under the Ramsar Convention and the Medway Estuary Marine Conservation Zone. Kent County Council's Ecological Advice Service said the proposed development will negatively impact the site boundaries and species present due to increase in disturbance from a number of factors, including increasing lighting, noise and recreational pressure. And Kent County Council's archaeological team noted that we have concerns about the impact of the development on historic landscape character and the setting of designated assets, including impacts on the setting of 2 conservation areas and individually listed buildings. In fact, there was not a single environmental professional that the appellant consulted who thinks that this is a viable site, because this is an attack on local protected sites. The appellant wants to destroy 60,000 apple trees and 7 kilometres of ancient hedgerow, replacing prime agricultural land with nearly 50 hectares of concrete. Yes, they will plant a few trees and create some borders and grass, but this will not be sufficient, and it will have a severe and negative impact on nearby protected sites such as the estuary and the marshes. Even the appellant in their appeal submission have admitted that the effect on the landscape will be major. And they are not my words. I quote directly from their documentation, where they have admitted that this 10-year development will create a major adverse effect on local landscape. They go on to state that they expect the adverse effects to reduce to moderate after 15 years. And this is 15 years after the 10-year construction period. But of course, this is irreversible. It's total destruction by the appellant. It would be finite and forever, a grave to the orchards which once gave life. And what about the health of our residents? the pollution generated from the construction trucks and the HGVs for a decade, in addition to the 2,000 more cars from the new residents, which will significantly add to the pollution footprint of the area. In May 2018, the World Health Organization cited Medway, Gillingham, as being the fourth worst town in the country for air pollution. This puts us 16 places above London. Medway Council's 2018 Air Quality Status Report cited the main source of air pollution in the district is road traffic emissions from major roads, including the M2 and the A2. It goes on to say that Medway suffers from significant congestion. The report concludes by saying road traffic is the dominant source of pollution, and reducing road traffic emissions is therefore the key air quality priority. Another significant challenge is accommodating the large demand for development in Medway, and this is likely to put existing areas of poor air quality under additional pressure. But how can we quantify the damage that this development will do to the local area and the planet as a whole? Well, according to the Climate Change Committee, who advised the UK government, the BSHF and the Empty Homes Agency, the construction of and subsequent 50 years of living in 1,250 brick-built homes will generate emissions equivalent to 332,500 tonnes of carbon dioxide. We absolutely recognise that housing development will impact the environment and that social housing is needed in Medway. But the level of the harm to the ecosystems, character and appearance of the local environment and the harm it does to our health must be balanced against the social and economic benefits of this development. And the truth is that against the backdrop of the Medway local plan, which we're assured by Medway Council will meet the government's overestimated full local housing need, a 1,250 home housing development that will permanently impact the environment, creates 50 hectares of concrete, worsens air quality, impacts sites of special scientific interest and Ramsar zones, of which there are only 73 in the whole of the UK, reduces our ability to provide UK grown fruit to our own citizens and those that we trade with, permanently prevents Lower Rainham residents from having the future security that would come from being able to grow any kind of produce themselves on this site in the future, would provide little to no benefit to local residents, and it must be seen simply as financially profiteering application and no more. AC Goatham and Son have themselves claimed to be the custodian of this land which has existed as fertile agricultural land since at least 1869, and land which is more valuable to our national security than the 189 million that this land would be worth if planning permission is granted here, and significantly more than the estimated 500 million that the properties on this site would generate in income. Put simply, this is about turning our precious soil into banknotes and nothing more. In summary, there is always scope to build houses and meet local housing needs on sites that are far better suited to development and where the impact will not be as disastrous and long-lasting. Such sites may require more innovative thinking or result in lower profit margins. But at a time where climate change and mental well-being is very much at the forefront of our society, surely such options are a better way to go. Better for individuals, better for the heritage of our town, and better for the planet as a whole. We would like to end by sharing with you a video which we have created with the community to try and capture the emotion, the passion, the journey, and the ludicrousy of this application. And I'd like to also take the opportunity to thank my fellow steering group members and all of everyone within the Facebook group and our community pages that have fought tirelessly for over 2 years to prevent this from happening. So with permission, I would like to share a video with you all.
Once upon a time in Rainham, Kent, many, many years ago, there was an apple orchard. Rainham saw the development of new homes, roads and services. So much had changed in over 150 years, yet the apple orchards remained and continued to bear fruit. The residents of Rainham walked freely through the orchards for many decades, and local wildlife shared in the nectar of the land. But the fairy tale was not to last. In 2019, the custodians of the land, farmers AC Goatham Son, applied for planning permission to destroy the orchards and build over 1,200 homes in its place. The residents cried no as loud as they could. Medway Council said no. Yet still AC Goatham Son are pushing for their plans to go ahead. Once again, the residents of Rainham must join forces and fight against the destruction of 60,000 fruit trees. So much is at stake. The loss of 126 acres of agricultural land classified as excellent to good. The long-term impact upon local wildlife and the various habitats within Riverside Country Park. Increased pressure on the local road network, a struggling hospital and oversubscribed education and healthcare services. An increase in air pollution in an area where levels are already rated as unsafe by the World Health Organization. Don't let this be the last harvest. Stop Gotham's decades of irreversible destruction.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Could I ask you, the people who've just spoken to, put your cameras back on, please? Thank you very much. Can I ask, are you happy to take any questions that Mr. Lopez might have for you? Yep. Have any questions, Mr. Lopez?
Madam, just a few, just to make the steering group aware. Thank you for their objection. I note the themes of objection, and I say to all of them they are well covered and will be covered in the evidence to come. So they shouldn't feel shortchanged in terms of my questions. Only then for Miss or Mrs. Hewitt, just a few questions for you.
Yes.
If I might. Is it Miss or Mrs. for you?
It's Mrs.
Mrs. Hewitt, thank you. Just a couple of fact-specific matters. Relating to GP capacity, you mentioned a surgery that might be soon closing, and I didn't know which surgery you meant.
I didn't collect that figure myself. I don't know if anyone else from the steering group.
And that was Paul. He's not available today as he's at work, but he has all the stats.
We can come back to you with that. And on that point, actually, there was a very recent article on the Kent Messenger online highlighting concerns about local GP surgeries coming close to retirement ages of the GPs available and the worries about them closing across the board. So it might be worth looking at that as well. It is a genuine concern.
I'm not sure my interest lies in the article dealing with the potential for a future closure. It was really the contact had with a particular surgery where you were suggesting that, but I appreciate another gentleman will deal with it, that they might be closing.
We can come back to you on that. We can find it out.
Thank you. You could park that one. And then can I ask you, away from GP capacity, about the public right-of-way network local to the site and connectivity, and just two aspects there, please. You talked about, and indeed we saw it reflected in the video, the walking freely through the site. Was that intended to refer to Blaw's farm?
No, it was the orchards in question. Residents have used that area, and hence why an application has been submitted some time ago now. We're waiting updates on that for a PROW application.
Yeah, I'm coming on to that, but can I just deal with separately the walking freely bit? So when I heard reference to walking freely, it was intended to mean off the bridleway, is that right?
Yes, it's the entire site.
The entire site. That's what the
lots of dog walkers would regularly walk in the morning and the evenings between the trees, enjoying the scenery with no issue from the landowner. And we say decades, but it's probably been a lot longer than that.
Yeah. So what you mean is along routes that aren't dedicated as public rights of way, correct?
Not currently, yes.
Yeah. Did you include the bridleway in that or not?
In the PROW?
No, in terms of the freely walking bit, is that intended to encompass the bridleway?
For the purposes of this appeal, it's with regards to the orchard specifically.
Right, so excluding the bridleway?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, because the bridleway is already a public right-of-way for those on horses and...
Yeah, I have that. It's the moving freely bit. Were you intending to include the bridleway in that or not?
No.
No. Can I just ask you about this prospective public right-of-way application? I think you mean to include a new right-of-way on the definitive map. Is that what you...
Yes.
That might be back with... Is that back with Mrs. Hewitt? I don't know. Or Mrs. Belmonte, I don't mind who.
Sorry, the lady that dealt with it isn't here to answer specific questions.
Fine, so perhaps you can deal with it. If not, come back to us.
The council will have full information regarding that application. Adam Taylor, I believe, is his name, who is the public right-of-way officer for Medway Council.
Right.
A route has been mapped out, and I believe that as part of that application, AC Goatham were advised that it was taking place because that was a legal requirement. So you should have that information somewhere.
Yeah, but as it presently sits, you're not suggesting that an order has been made pursuant to that application, are you?
No, just the application itself, which is currently being considered by the council.
Okay, so lodged application for the addition of what the applicant would hope will be a future public right of way, but no order made in respect of that application. That's correct?
That's correct, yes.
I understand it. Thank you very much. Those are my questions. And Madam, so that the steering group are aware, all of the other issues raised will be dealt with in terms of the evidence to follow. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. I've just got a question of clarification for Mr. Clark. In your statement, you referred, it looks like you referred to Rainham Grammar School on Pump Lane.
Yes.
Where on Pump Lane is it?
It's just above the intersection with Beeching's Way. So Pump Lane extends from the northern
south of the railway line.
Yeah, yes, correct.
That's what I wanted to be clear about. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. There are no other questions from me. Oh, Councillor Potter.
Just a couple of points to help clarify matters, if I may. With regard to this public right-of-way application, I understand there will be a consultation on that in the near future. In terms of the views from the bridleway across the orchards, the photo behind me was actually taken from, I took from the bridleway on a nice day in the summer of 2019. In terms of the point about the potential doctor's surgery closing, what we have is a healthy living centre in Rainham, and one of the suites there that has a satellite branch of another surgery. That suite has closed and taken its patient list to their main surgery, which is 2 miles away in Park Wood. So although they're taking their patient list with them, obviously that those doctors will not be located at the Rainham Healthy Living Centre, and I have a petition lodged with the council to take up that matter with Kent and Medway CCG. And I should just say the statement I made earlier was not just from me, it was also from my ward colleague in Rainham North Ward, Councillor Kirsting Carr. And actually one final point I wrote down here, and I think it will help everyone over the next 3 weeks, is Twydall is pronounced Twydall, not Tweedle. So I think we should just get that right, because I think over 3 weeks that will drive everybody mad. But understanding, Mr. Lopez, you're not from Medway.
I learned that this morning. You won't hear it repeated.
All right. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.